Welcome to Baker Dave Presents. Today, once again, we're here in the Morgan Hall Kitchens on Temple University's campus. It's a working kitchen, so there might be some noises, some people might walk by. Today, I'm making my world famous vegan chocolate cupcakes. I'm gonna explain to you exactly why vegan is so important to me, and I don't think it's for the reasons you think it is. So let's get to it. Welcome. So today we are going to make vegan cupcakes. We're going to talk about vegan baking because it's a little bit different than vegan cooking. Vegan cooking is super simple. You just leave out animal products, right? So you're going to leave out your dairy. You're going to leave out anything that comes from an animal or anything that is an animal, right? Some exceptions I learned throughout this process is honey is most vegans won't eat honey because honey enslaves bees to make the honey. I think they make it anyways, but that's not my call. No honey when you're doing vegan stuff. But it's interesting when it comes to baking, because baking is chemistry, right? It's actually way more of a science than you would get in cooking. So cooking, maybe you have pasta and some tomato sauce, and it's easy to leave the meat out, right? With baking, you actually need the eggs, because they will coagulate at a certain temperature, and they will help set your baking product, right? So taking the eggs out, taking all the other products out, you have to figure out how to get the protein levels to what you need to. And how to keep a moist product and how to keep everything rolling, which is very difficult. So that comes to why vegan baking is so important to me. I personally, and I'm not a vegan, maybe I could be if there was good vegan bacon, but there's not. I gotta be honest with you. I love bacon, and you can't really do that with vegan. However, for me, vegan baking is super important. It actually is a big reason why I'm still here at Temple University. When I first started here, 14 years ago. It's been a long time now. My first year was not good. It was a terrible, terrible first year. I had people that wouldn't listen to me. I was working Sundays, Saturdays, Sundays. I was doing all this stuff. I was in the process of trying to switch over. When I got here, we did everything with mixes. So literally like the mixes you buy in the grocery store and you add water to, that's how all our cakes were. Everything was out of mixes or out of the freezer. There was nothing from scratch when I first started here. And I was tasked with trying to switch that over, but the staff I had wasn't necessarily into the whole doing the scratch stuff yet. So my first year was very rough. A lot of issues with people not liking me and not liking my ideas, and then as if that wasn't enough, I got my car stolen in the first year. So I'm a suburb guy. I don't live in the city. So the idea that, and I've never lived in the city. So I come to the city. I come early in the morning. I see all sorts of crazy stuff on the streets on Broad. Temple's very safe, but you got to get to Temple first. It's like you instantly appear at Temple, you know what I mean? But I did get my car stolen the first year, and I should have quit like 12 times. I'm not going to lie. I don't know why I stayed on. But for some reason I did. And one of the things that really kept me motivated and kept me focused on doing cool stuff was the vegans. So the vegan population here at Temple is, I don't know how big it is, but they're super loud. Like they definitely want to make sure that everybody loves vegan and everybody becomes vegan and save all the animals, and that's super fantastic. I'm not taking that away from anybody. However, because they're loud, and again, there might only be like 5 of them for all I know. I haven't met a lot of vegans, but I feel like there's only like a couple and they just happen to be loud and they always are wanting more and more vegan options. I could be wrong. I feel like it's grown since I've been here in the last 14 years. But they always wanted more and more stuff, and you can't do that with mixes, right? So as I'm transferring things over, I started to get into vegan baking. And what's really cool is, in my industry, if I were at a fancy 5-star restaurant or hotel or something, I would not be making very much vegan. They don't care. Like they're going out once a year, they're spending hundreds of dollars on a meal. They do not want vegan food. Like there'll be a couple of vegan restaurants that might want vegan food, but you're gonna be a special vegan baker that cares enough to do that. And being in this situation and being allowed to experiment, and the scientist that I feel like I am, being able to take recipes that I don't think are good enough and make them good enough so that they taste to me just like the regular vegan or regular food that's not vegan, but making it out of vegan products so everyone can have it. And one of the things I did notice early on is the vegan people were loud. The people that I realized really need the vegan food were quiet. So I feel like I'm fighting for the people that don't complain but actually need it. So if you have a dairy intolerance or you're allergic to eggs, like you don't want to stand out. You don't want to be the guy that asks for the special meal. But if there's vegan food there, and you already know it doesn't have eggs or milk or anything in it because it's vegan, you can just eat that and be one of the vegans and not feel like you're some special person that had to ask for the special meal. So ultimately, they got me really involved in this, and I had a blast recreating all these recipes. So this is one of my favorite recipes. It seemed to be one of the ones that was most well received, and it's vegan chocolate cupcakes. So there's going to be a couple things here. But what's great about vegan food, I got to go to this real quick because I'm thinking in my head right now. Because it doesn't have butter in it, it's super easy to mix. Like anybody can make vegan food very easily. Like all the fat and all the liquid products, you literally just take the dry stuff, you put it all together, and then you take the liquid stuff and you put it all together. And you end up with your product. And it's so much easier than creaming the butter and creaming the sugar, and you don't need a big mixer. You don't need all this extra stuff. You can do it in your house. It's really super easy. So without further ado, I'm going to get started on some vegan chocolate cupcakes, which are super cool. What we have is, again, like I said, we're going to take all the dry ingredients first. So we're going to take 3.5 cups of flour, 2 cups of sugar. We're going to take a tablespoon of salt, and as I'm going through this, salt, super important for vegan people. I apologize for people that are low sodium or whatever, but you don't have the salted butter, so you don't have anything else in it. You have to add the salt to get the flavor. And if you've ever had a product, like if you've ever had a muffin or something that just, it didn't taste bad, it just tasted bland, it was probably missing either salt or vanilla. The two things that you don't really taste in there, but without it, it's completely flat, and you don't understand why it's flat. Make sure you put your salt in there. Tablespoon of baking powder, or baking soda, my mistake. Big difference. And we also have 2/3 cup of cocoa powder. Now, going back on this too, I want to mention something else I learned along the process here. Sugar. So not all sugar is vegan. All the sugar we use here at Temple is, but not all sugar is vegan. When they process sugar to make white sugar, they use bone char. So they actually use animals' bones, and they'll process the sugar through that to clean out, I think as like a charcoal. I'm not exactly sure of the process. So when I got here, that was one of the first things I did is I called around to find out the sugar that we get, is it processed that way? And the sugar that we get is not. The sugar that we get that is processed up in New York is actually one of 2 facilities in the United States that does not process with bone char. This is 13 years ago. It's possible that there's more that don't use that process anymore either. But so our sugar is vegan, in fact. So you're going to take all the dry ingredients, like I said. Super simple. You're just mixing them up just to incorporate them so that you can make sure that the baking soda is evenly distributed. And then the other important ingredients are your wet ingredients, right? We have hot coffee. The hot coffee does 2 things. It's going to add acidity, so it's going to actually help the baking soda react because the baking soda doesn't have an acid in it. That's the main difference between baking powder and baking soda. Baking powder is basically baking soda with an acid in it to make it react. So a lot of times your chocolate cakes, we have the coffee here. We actually have some vinegar we're going to add as well. It's going to help make that react. The other thing it's going to do is it's going to help break down some of the proteins from the flour so that you'll be able to use that to help set the cake as opposed to the eggs. So you're trying to pull the proteins from all the areas you can too so that you can have the full cake product that you want that you normally would have with eggs that we're not using now. So we have our vinegar, our vanilla, again, very important or it'll taste flat. And we have our oil. Again, oil instead of butter because oil does not come from a cow. It comes from a plant, right? Ours is a soybean-based oil, I believe. So, and then super simply, all we're going to do is we're going to add this all. The other thing the hot coffee does, it's going to help melt the cocoa powder and help that to incorporate better. And you literally are just going to mix this up with your whisk, like so. If you don't use hot coffee, you'll see it'll be a much lighter color here. The other thing coffee does, which is great, is coffee's bitter, right? And chocolate's bitter. We don't have a lot of cocoa powder in here. So the bitterness from the coffee on your palate will actually help you to feel like it's more chocolatier than it is, if that makes any sense, as opposed to just using hot water, which again, not acidic and won't enhance the actual chocolate flavor, which is what you're trying to do. You want this as chocolatey as possible because you don't want it, you want people to eat this and be like, wow, that's vegan? I didn't even know. But I mean, that's it. I mean, could it be any simpler, seriously? And then we're just gonna scoop it into our pan and throw it in the oven. The other things that people will use from time to time that I have noticed, and for some of my other recipes I have to use it, for you to get protein, you can't always get it from, like I'm extracting it from the flour in this particular case. Sometimes you need it from soy milk. So you're getting the protein from the soy, which is high in protein, or tofu, which is high in protein, or flaxseed. You're trying to get something that's going to help the whole process coagulate so that when it sets, as the thing rises, you're going to have baking soda in here, and it's going to still cause everything to rise, right? If you don't have a protein in there or something that's going to cause it to set, it'll just fall back down when it's done. Like it needs to actually stay wherever it rose to, and that's what we're actually trying to accomplish here. The flaxseed one I always thought was interesting. If you grind flaxseed up, it actually acts very similar to eggs. So I'm also a big fan of that. I don't know. I'm trying to think of some of the other. Oh, with the honey I was talking about earlier. So if you ever go over to Johnson, we have vegan granola. And granola is typically made with honey. So one of the things that makes our granola delicious and vegan is we use maple syrup. So maple syrup is an invert sugar very similar to honey and acts very similar to honey. And will cause the oatmeal and what have you to come together like a granola, right? Quite delicious. So like I said, at this point you're going to take it and you're going to put it in the oven just like any other cake. 350 for maybe 20 minutes, give or take. Like I always tell everyone, anyone that ever asks me when the cake is done, it's done when it's done. I don't really know, because you're going to have a different oven than I'm going to have. My oven might be hotter. My oven might not be as hot. You're going to want to test it. If you go by a timer and literally go in and just go for it, it might not be done, and then it's going to fall flat. You need it to fully rise up and fully set. And this vegan cake is no different than any other cake. So it looks like the cupcakes are about done now. They look beautiful. See how dark and lovely chocolatey that is? We're gonna let those cool a minute, but that's exactly what you want. They look like regular cupcakes, right? I mean, that's what you're going for, right? You don't want a cupcake that doesn't look like a cupcake. So we're gonna let those cool a minute. But these cupcakes are a little extra special out of the vegan world for me. I actually got this recipe from a lady. Back in 2010, me and my brother-in-law were on the Food Network. We were on one of those cake challenges. And it was super stressful. The whole process was stressful. And the two things I remember is, so we show up at the hotel, and right in front of us at the hotel checking in is this couple. And I find out that they're on the show too. And my brother-in-law, who's like, he's a little bit into, this is a competition, we can't be friends, we're trying to, win here. And I'm really like, this is just a TV show, who cares, let's have a good time. So they were in front of us, and they're like, hey, we're doing the show too, and they've been on like 5 of them at that point. So they're friendly with everybody, because they, again, aren't really looking at it as a competition like we were kind of looking at it as, because it was our one and only time that we were on the show. So it was just interesting to see how people react differently. So we do the show, and I always remember, like I said, meeting them for the first time because it was at the hotel and we happened to come in at the same time. We filmed it in Colorado. And after the show was over, I stayed really good friends with this couple. They live out in Chicago. They owned a vegan bakery out there. And when I came here and was doing all this stuff, I asked her for some recipes. I still talk to her online every so often or whatever. And this was her big recipe. She's like, this is the best, I make this cake all the time and people can't tell the difference. And surprisingly, she's 100% right. Like, you can't tell the difference. To me, this tastes exactly like chocolate cake, which is exactly what I wanted. So I love this recipe. And again, every time I make it, it makes me remember the one time I was on the Food Network. maybe someday again, but the one time that I was there, and we really had a great time. We ended up second place, I believe, which at the point they didn't actually show second place then. Then later they did show it, and I don't think the show's on anymore, but it was still a fun time, and I had a blast. It was a different experience, unique experience, the 8-hour competition, the whole interviewing before and after, and the whole process. It was fascinating to me, and I really came to enjoy that whole aspect. And I got a great recipe for vegan cupcakes out of it. So the next step for this is we want to top it somehow, right? And typically, a lot of times you go to a vegan bakery or restaurant or whatever, and they'll make a shortening-based buttercream, which I'm not a huge fan of, to get rid of the butter. And they'll literally just take shortening and sugar and then maybe some cocoa powder or whatever, and they'll whip it up, and it kind of tastes like your typical snack cake that you might buy in the grocery store type of icing, mass-produced or whatever. And it's fine, it's vegan, but it's a lot of trans fat, it's shortening, it's not necessarily good for you. I try to avoid that if I can. Sometimes I will make that kind if that's what people want, if they want an actual birthday cake that I have to write on or make flowers or something, because I can't do that with this. But instead, I designed a ganache to use with it. Now, ganache typically is heavy cream and chocolate. That's it. Well, heavy cream's obviously out because I'm making vegan, right? So what I learned is I just use some coffee. So I go back and I get maybe a half a cup of coffee left over from the morning, and I'm just going to heat that up. One of the things you find out is the fat is super important. So if you're making a ganache normally, and if you want to make truffles, those are all just basically ganache. It's, again, heavy cream and chocolate. If you're using a dark chocolate, you're going to go 1-to-1. You're going to go a pound of heavy cream and a pound of chocolate, right? If you're using a milk chocolate, you're going to go 2-to-1. You're going to go a pound of heavy cream to 2 pounds of milk chocolate, because you start adding more fat to it, so it starts changing the ratio. With this, I'm not using heavy cream. So because I'm using coffee, which doesn't have any fat in it, I have to actually adjust it the other way. And I'm only using about 4 ounces of coffee, and I'm going to use a pound of chocolate because I need the extra fat from the chocolate because I don't have it in the coffee. And quite simply, like I said, I've got this up full blast. It's going to take a minute, but it's going to start boiling. You literally just need to boil it. Once it boils, we're just going to take it off and stir in the chocolate. That's it. And at that point, our cupcakes hopefully will be cooled. We can start just literally dipping the tops. If you let it sit, you'll actually be able to whip it up, and you can pipe with it and do some other stuff if you want. But initially, it's going to be melted, so it's going to look like a melted chocolate, which is pretty awesome, I think, for our vegan stuff here as well. Which, again, I have these vegan chocolate chips. Most chocolate chips, not vegan. So you want to be very careful. When you're looking at chocolate chips in the grocery store, they're going to have milk powder, or they're going to have, you got a casein. They're going to look for some different things, keywords that are going to show you whether it's got milk in it or not. Whey. These do not. They're actually what's called couverture chips. So it's literally just dark chocolate. The only ingredients in here is cocoa liqueur, cocoa butter, or the fat, and sugar. That's it, and vanilla. That's it. So already we're totally boiling. We're literally just going to take this off the heat because you don't want to burn the chocolate. We're just going to dump the chocolate in, and we're going to stir it up until the chocolate melts. Which, wow, it doesn't even look like it's going to melt, but I swear it will. I swear it will. It just takes a minute. The heat, literally the residual heat, is what's melting the chocolate. Dark chocolate, you don't want to bring chocolate past 120 degrees. Once you get past 120 degrees, you're actually going to start crystallizing the sugars in the chocolate. Making a mess now. You're actually going to crystallize the sugars in chocolate. So if you overheat chocolate, what you'll get is chunks. It'll be actually gritty, which is totally not what you want. If you go past 180, I believe it is, you'll actually start burning the chocolate. I've got chips stuck in here. Don't try, I mean, no, you should try this at home, I'm kidding. Super easy, even if it doesn't look like it this very second. But as you stir quicker, it starts actually coming together. I was kind of, talking, so I wasn't really stirring as quick as I should. And look how smooth and delicious that is. And again, you could take the same chocolate, let it set up a little bit, scoop it in little balls, dip it in a hard chocolate. You're going to have actual chocolate truffles for your special someone, Valentine's Day, whatever's going on, maybe just because you like chocolate truffles. Maybe the big game, all the other manly foods are all taken up and you want to make some truffles, whatever works for you. So, like I said, this is exactly what we're looking for, is this beautiful, smooth consistency, because we're going to dip. And we're literally, don't try that at home. We're literally going to take the cupcakes out and just dip the tops of them in it, just so that we have a nice little chocolate glacé, so to speak, on top. And that'll set up a little bit. It's not going to be liquidy the entire time. It's It's kind of a fondue texture at this point. So you could also take this and dip your strawberries in if you're vegan and you want fondue, and most fondue has milk in it. This doesn't. Has like a slight coffee flavor, but again, the coffee just adds a bitterness, so you don't notice it as much as you think you would, which is kind of cool. Some other things I've done with it, I've actually used orange juice. If you want an orange flavored chocolate, that's pretty cool. It's pretty similar, the amounts. Cranberry juice, pretty much any kind of liquid. I wouldn't suggest water, but I mean, if that's all you got, I'm sure you could do it. It would be the actual chocolate flavor is all you're going to get then. You're not going to get any enhancing of that. Okay. That's a baker move there, you know what I mean? Just going to... That's enough. Good enough. We'll save those for later. So yeah, I mean, this is basically all we're working on here. And again, it's a beautiful, quick little vegan cupcake. And I swear to you, no one is going to know. I suppose I should try one, right, for the camera? No one's going to know that this is vegan. If you look at this, just even to see the texture as this breaks open. Now I feel like I'm on one of those shopping shows, like I'm selling it to you. The texture of this is exactly what you want for a chocolate cupcake, right? I mean, it looks like a chocolate cupcake. It's a little sticky. A bit messy, but quite delicious. Probably should have had some milk. Oh wait, it's vegan, so it'd have to be like almond milk or something. My bad. Quite delicious. So next time you're looking to make some vegan cupcakes, this is totally the recipe you need to use. I finally got me some not milk to wash down my cupcake so I can talk to you. Thanks for joining us here on Baker Dave Presents. Join us again next time, and remember, every recipe has a story.